What's up? We're back.
Yes, sir.
Jordan, man. Long time no see. How things going?
Yeah, incredibly okay as always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we took a little bit of break. Things have been nuts.
Yeah.
Understatement. I had a baby too. So yeah. I mean, why not
minor change.
Why not add to all the stuff going on right now? Having a baby during a pandemic is a really interesting experience.
By interesting, you mean stressful.
Yeah, but like take the hospital and turn it into the airport is what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's like, you only certain people are getting in there. I was lucky to even go.
Yeah.
So yeah, thankful everything went okay. I have 3 sons now. Pretty stoked about that. And good Lord, that weight of responsibility is no joke. So wife's doing awesome. She did awesome. I'm just relieved and grateful. So, and I'm also grateful that I get to sit here and talk to you this morning. Man. So anyway, the topic for today was something you brought up. I was wondering if you wanted to explain a little more about where it came from, what it means, and we'll get rolling.
Yes, sir. Well, the play on words I chose was the Holocaust, and there is a brutally obvious fact that you and I have not a decent amount of melanin in our skin, and there's some incredibly overwhelmingly suffocating events going on culturally, and I think ultimately it's a spiritual battle, and it's a challenge to be a white guy from Texas and a white guy from in Oregon. And
I forgot you were from Texas.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a very much a no-brainer for most people to just tap out and not even attempt to have a discussion about these things, because by default, unfortunately, most people, I don't know if they're racist against us by saying because we don't have that amount of melanin, we're not allowed to talk about being a human. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I think skin tone can be parallel to a lot of things in life, and skin tone is just one of many things that creates division inside of us, and it manifests in physical life, whether it's a cultural division, whether it's a spiritual division, whether it's an Allah or a Jesus Christ, whichever thing you choose to subscribe to and be connected to. By default, there's going to be a decent amount of people saying, I'm sorry, I'm not sorry that you're wrong. You know, and there's going to be an overwhelming flood of judgment and assumptions made about who you are because of a skin tone or a spiritual choice or whatever. So that's kind of the anecdote, kind of the preface. I want to say that, obviously I'm brutally compassionate to and aware that I don't have a lot of melanin because of a lot of things we're wanting to discuss. I think they supersede skin type. And the reason why I chose Holocaust, and I drew a picture about separating the words hollow and then having an image of the O being inside of a man or a woman, whoever the astronaut is in the picture. I think there's a hollowness inside of us. And I think what one chooses to put inside that void throughout their life inevitably puts them on one side of, like, metaphorically, whether it's a track, like people say, I grew up on that side of the track, or I grew up in this country. What we choose to put in the void puts us in groups, and we, whether it's, the Holocaust reference is trying to say, like, we are eerily close to tiptoeing towards, not to say Trump is Hitler, and his non-activity, and his for whatever reason inability to be a fucking man and a president and step up to the plate and really do what needs to be done to quiet the racial issues. it's hard, man. It's hard to even like describe what we want to talk about because of the tiptoeing that has to be. I mean, I am brutally sensitive and compassionate to all perspectives. As much as I have experientially not experienced being on the hard side of what racial issues cause. Like I had the golden ticket. I didn't choose to be a white dude born in Texas. You know what I mean? I didn't. And the likelihood of me experiencing what happened is next to zero. And I'm totally aware of that. I'm totally aware of how privileged I am. And I didn't choose that. So instead of being a quiet, terrified little bitch and choosing to not speak into something, I think there's a level of duty we have to discuss these things. You know what I mean?
I know.
And it's terrifying how a dude, Hitler, who secretly just wanted to grow up and be a painter and express himself through paint. It's fascinating how he, the canvas he chose to paint his hate on was an entire group of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in the medium, he used the pastels and the textures of the blood of all these Jews that got painted on the canvas of hate. You know, I think that it will forever be a part of the human condition. We are just repeating history. We'll always be repeating history because I think the core issue is there is a hollowness inside of every single one of us. And we are born into, whether it's a culture, whether it's a spiritual way of thinking, we are told that there is a right way and a wrong way to do life, quote unquote. And the more you are influenced, whether it's you're in a gang, whether it's you're in a conservative church, and you are just bombarded with ideology. The more you are influenced by ideologies, the more you are knowing or unknowingly separating yourself from others. You're dividing yourself, not only from them, but you're dividing yourself from yourself. And I think that's the long-winded core issue I really want to discuss is what is happening in this moment in our country, in the world. And that's the thing that's very fascinating is we're having a peanut butter and jelly sandwich of suffocating anxiety and stress. And like this peanut butter and jelly sandwich everyone's eating is so fucking moldy and so disgusting. And we're being force fed through the stresses and anxieties of the pandemic. And simultaneously, there's a health issue going on. And that's what's fascinating about it. There is a unavoidable fear from a health issue. And then there's an unavoidable fear from a spiritual issue and a cultural issue going on simultaneously that are affecting the whole world. It's fascinating. And I think to the degree we can understand how divided we are within ourselves subjectively and stop projecting that every single fucking problem in the world is out there. Instead, like recognizing that the only problem you as an individual have is inside.
Yeah.
And it's the ideologies and the thoughts you think that you are implementing and you're filling in that void. It's those things that you adhere to that are dividing you amongst people, and it's most importantly dividing you against yourself. So it's kind of a cerebral safari, you know, but I, as respectfully and tactfully as I could kind of present a dialogue around this, I think it's a really, really fucking important time to say, yeah, there is a horrific amount of pain and anxiety and fear and hate being externally displayed. And I think it's the most important time for all of us to look inside and say, how do I play into that? How am I being the enabler of that happening? How am I quietly being a non-influencer of change? Or how am I actively being a fucking looter and breaking into a Gucci store and stealing 73 purses and saying Black Lives Matter? Or saying like correlating the ridiculousness of some of the stuff that's going on, opposed to like, I think one of the most beautiful things I've seen in the last few days is I saw a group of black men like arm in arm protecting a white cop.
Yeah, that was awesome.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, that's it. Like, that is it. Like that is the only thing that's physically going to be expressed. Like those men who are linking arms, like they had the thing in their void. They figured out in that moment what does it mean to be love? What is the antidote to hate? It is love. And what does that mean? And how do you manifest that? How do you link arms? And how do we as a species, how does we as creatures, humanity, how are we going to link arms and protect the thing the thing you have three of now, the future generation of what we are. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's you have a as a father of three boys now, like I know you have a ridiculous heightened sense of awareness of what you do, the cause and effect of what that does in terms of leading an example and setting a tone, you know? So I think what's important to discuss is not pointing a finger outward. It's for you inward, and for myself inward. It's not what are they doing wrong? It's what am I doing wrong?
So let's talk about that. So to me, it's like, I mean, what I see going on a lot is that it's, if you take the image of a hole, like you just said, inside of somebody, to me, what I see a lot of is people thinking they have like this introspective eyesight, being able to tell you, oh, I know what you're filling your hole with is wrong.
Yeah.
Let me give you what I know is right. And to me, it's that fundamental idea, which is the cause of so much of this division. It's being able to look at someone and judge and think that you know, or like you see that thing that's so obvious that you're like, oh, that's so despicable that you could be that hateful or that bigoted or whatever. And we can look at them and judge and be like, oh, yeah, I know what's wrong with you. But it's like, do you really? I mean, besides the surface level bullshit that you're seeing coming at you right now that anybody can see, like what makes you think like you know inside of that person that you could fix that hollow person? Because we all do it. I mean, dude, I was a master of it for a long time. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason you go to seminary and want to teach God's word, is you think you have the gift of filling the hole in somebody else. You want, oh man, I have the puzzle piece that'll fix your whole shit. Yeah. You know? And it's a humbling feeling when you realize, yeah, I don't have that, and I can't even figure out the puzzle piece in myself. Mm-hmm. I keep trying. There's some that are pretty damn close, but then I'm like, yeah, it's not the one. And you just keep trying and progressing and moving. But to me, when I look at, what's going on, and it's nothing new. It's just the flames are stoked right now of a fire that's been burning for a long time. Mm-hmm. And you see that, to me, where it's just like, it's this division. Like this is one facet of a way bigger division of what goes on all over the place. And to me, it's that. So, I mean, when you think about it, like, I mean, when you see people doing that and judging, even though they may like have everybody on their side, being like, dude, this is wrong or whatever. And like, I know what's wrong with you or whatever. Like, how do we get to a place of having more compassion there, to a place of, not just seeing the obvious thing, but seeking understanding of like, we don't know like this human and like what's made them do what they're doing now. Like, how do we err on the side of understanding and show compassion towards people? I mean, there's a reason Martin Luther King was so powerful, where he had that, like, I can love these people because I can see deeper than what's just coming at me on the surface level right now. Mm-hmm. To me, the fear right now is, are we such a surface-based, people that we're just going to respond by whatever happens? Like, are we deeper than that, where we could sit there and have people spitting on us and you could still love them through that to help a grander vision take place? So I guess that's what I'm wondering, man. Do you see that? How do you see the division starting? Does it start with trying to fill that hole? Is it something that is really driving the whole, division between all of us? Mm-hmm. Like, how do you see it?
So, question being like, what is that first tiptoe towards finding peace externally? Is it found inside, or is there something that you can implement externally? Well, I think to the degree you can find compassion for others, there is a mirroring of compassion within yourself. And I know that anytime I have had division or hate or anger or frustration, any negative adjective directed at somebody, I know that I have found a way to correlate it back to something within myself that I have wanted to hold someone else accountable for and responsible for. I think for me, I would say there is always a choice in how we perceive reality playing out. And when I choose to make a judgment of something, opposed to that's reactive, opposed to making a choice to extend compassion, which I think can only be brought about from being responsive and not reactive. I think choosing, like we were discussing before, like looking at the two players, like George Floyd and the cop, like in choosing to say that these are two men that have lived radically different lives, and they have, for whatever reason, they have experienced things in their own independent lives that culminated in both of them being in that position in that exact moment. And the amount of hate and need to fucking control that cop's external reality, the small man syndrome, like we discussed, that hunger for why I think many men and women want that badge, is to have a false sense of security that I'm in control of something that a past life didn't allow me to have, and I'm going to throw that shit down whenever I feel insecure or questioned. You know what I mean? I think the only way to make sense of any chaos externally, interpersonally, is to first understand how could I get to that point of doing that exact same thing. You know, it's that, not to use, because the Holocaust was kind of the metaphor I was using to implement into this conversation, but I don't know anyone that has the balls to sit down quietly in a room and say, could I be Hitler if given the right scenario? Yeah. Could I be someone that has so much fucking hate within myself that I have to express externally onto other people? Because ultimately that's what it is. When you can look at something so superficial as where you were born or what skin tone you have, and see that person is less than I am because of something that was out of their control by default, like there is a terrifying amount of pain in that individual. And there is, and I think that's ultimately the biggest core issue here, is the belief systems and the ideologies that are fucking programmed into us from birth. We are told, because you are American, because you are Hindu, because you're a Jew, there are a set system. There are bullet points of what makes us better than other cultures and what makes us kind of in the underdog story compared to other cultures, whether it's by sheer numbers of, we're a smaller group of people, we don't have the financial means to be superior, we don't have the army compared to them, that's why we're weaker. There's prejudices and there's stereotypes and the ideology spiritually that I think all these things are drawing lines in the sand everywhere. And internally, I think there is a sick amount of courage necessary to say, how am I that? How am I the cop, or how am I the one getting suffocated? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's how, and how do you take responsibility for that? You know what I mean? So that's the bigger, I think, over-encompassing question is, what ideologies or what groups, what spiritual gangs am I affiliated with? Whether it's, like yourself, you had to go to seminary, so you had, like, that was the hazing of like getting affiliated with like God's gang of like Christianity, which by default, and you and I both experienced this, is as soon as you become a Christian, and if you want to be a good one, you're gonna go tell people how they're wrong. And if they want to burn in hell, go for it. But if they don't, like, drink the juice.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you set up a lemonade stand for Jesus juice and you save lives. And that's how we're programmed to live.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the only way to make sense of fucking any of this is to say, in myself, the things that I subscribe to as quote unquote truth, how are those things? How is that spiritual group I'm affiliated with? How is this school I went to? How is this the sports team I cheer for? How is the, like, signing the dotted line of a soul commitment to all these things and saying all of these group, this is what I am. I am all these things. How does subscribing to those things separate you from so many other humans? And how does that play out in your life? You know what I mean? So I think the first step is to say, what do I believe is true? And why am I a ride or die cheerleader for that group or that cult? You know what I mean? So for you to put it back onto you, like in your life, like in this moment, or, you know, go down memory lane, like what things have crippled you and prevented you from being connected to other humans? And because ultimately that's what we're talking about. We're talking about division. We're talking about right now there's a racial division worldwide, and it's gone on for every fucking day humans have been alive. It's been one of the most powerful ways we segregate, and we were so fucking stupid and ignorant enough to at one point have different drinking fountains. Like, that's how stupid this got.
Yeah.
And I don't say stupid lightly. I'm like, it's so fucking sad that human beings in a civilized quote unquote country said we need to segregate where we drink water.
Yeah.
It's so bananas to me. So for yourself, like, I know you're someone that wants to take responsibility and extreme ownership of where you're at in your life, and not look at the outer world and say that's the problem. So internally, like, what's your fucking problem? You know what I mean?
Sure.
What's dividing you and what's preventing you from connecting to anyone, any person, any culture, any race, any religion, any gender preference, from sitting across the table from that person and extending love and compassion and a desire to connect? What's preventing you from doing that?
Good question. You know, it's hard because I feel like growing up in the family and the culture, I guess, place that I grew up, it's, I guess, realizing that it was more of this quest for certainty for so long for me, that it was something where it's just like, I want security in who I am so I could feel safe, so I could feel, you know, like at peace, is what I thought came from like this quest of like knowing who God was, knowing who I am, knowing the world around me. Like, you don't realize how much we have this desire for that. Like, we want it so badly for things just to be, you know, black and white, you know. And I think it's the hardest realization is when you see that it's as much as you think you want that, it's not really real. And I think the biggest thing that divided me for so long was that it was almost being delusional in the sense that like I was drunk on the certainty that comes from where we live. And then where we live, I mean, you know, this capitalistic America where we, you know, we get our 401ks, we have health insurance, you know, we have auto insurance, we buy the safest car possible, we get the most stable job that we can. We live in comfort in the fact that we could just go get a Starbucks anytime we want. It's gotten even easier where we don't even have to go to the store to buy the things that we want. It's just so easy having what we want when we want it. And that's what certainty brings is that it's that level of immaturity of I want it now. And I think for me, that's the biggest point where I didn't realize how that really stunted my growth for so long. It's and to go into the place like what you're talking about and be really bold enough to say like I don't know here. when you look across from whoever's talking to you and you don't understand their culture, or you don't understand what's made them who they are, in being okay and not having to try to convince them of anything. When you're a Christian and growing up that way, when you go to Christian school like we did, I mean, a big part of it is like your way of showing love for somebody else is to help them understand the predicament of life, where there's this thing is evil and sin, and like you want to be aware of this so you can be free from it. Like there's a way to be free from it. That's like, oh my God, there is. Wow, that's amazing. Like, why wouldn't you want to help someone understand that? But being so buried in that, what you're saying, like with ideology, it does cause division, because you can't help but sit across from you. And there is no listening. There's listening in the sense of like, okay, I'm using what you say as my next talking point, listening, not listening and genuinely inquiring, of like trying to like look into the eyes of that person and be like, wow, what is this person's experience? What truth do they have? Like, what can I learn from this person? It's more of like, how do I get them to where I think they need to be? And for me, it was that way for a long time. So I think that, that drive for certainty, which I feel like is a natural drive, which is healthy in so many ways. Like, we need security. We need, that certainty to do the things that are before us, but it's been perverted to this place that we're drunk on it all the time. And we don't realize that it's completely tainted our view of the world and how we treat each other. And for me, it's like after, the detox of coming out of that drunken place, it's just, it's so freeing just to be able to sit and listen to somebody, even, just have such polar opposite views. Work is the greatest place in the world for that, where you have guys that are most bigoted dudes. You're just like, did you just say that? To some of the people that have like awesome perspectives on things that I don't understand. And just to be able to sit and like listen and be like, okay, like, how did you get to that point? Even stuff I just want to scoff at and be like, oh my God, you're so wrong.
Yeah.
Like, but it's getting beyond that, to just like hear the heart, see the heart of the person behind you. And that doesn't come if I judge them instantly. We have to be willing to let go, and just seek to inquire, because it's so easy to be on that surface level. And once that person says that racist bullshit, you're like, all right, I'm done with you. But what? You just let that person go on in life being this racist dude who's going to raise another kid and then shoot some jogger in the street? Like, to me, it's like, how do we help show compassion towards those people to change? Because that's what it's about. We want this shit to change. It's never going to change if we just look at him and be like, you're a racist piece of shit. And that's it. It's being able to get to the place, like you just said, of being love in a way that we don't even understand it yet. So it's a long-winded way of saying that for me, man, it's been a long road to even get to a place where I feel like I am even touching the surface of being able to understand and listen to the person in front of me, where I'm not focused on the division.
Yeah.
So,
I think you fast forwarded the whole conversation, and you said, like, the drop the mic statement with you've been able to find and be honest about the fact that so much of what has crippled you is your innate desire to find security and that false sense of comfort that comes with protecting what your thoughts are and not allowing anyone else's perspectives or thoughts in. And that's what so much of what religion does, is it creates these impenetrable boundaries in our mind that say, I'm winning and you're going to lose to death, because I'm going to the pearly gates and you're literally going to be like with some sadistic Elon Musk and his blowtorch, just getting torched by some fucked up twin brother of Elon, forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And one of my favorite quotes, and we've brought this up before, but it's very timely, is the Martin Luther King Jr. is, the darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And there's such a brutal amount of truth in such a simple, couple sentences. It cuts through every aspect of everything that's wrong, period. And the reality is there's an irony to what cripples us, because there is as you said, there's a necessary and a needed kind of compass direction of find out what brings security and seek that out. Like no one healthy or sane actively seeks being in an insecure state always. Like that's not a healthy individual. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is by following this breadcrumb trail in life of I want to feel secure at all times and I want to feel comfort and I want to be lazy as fuck and I don't want to stretch my mind. I don't want to flex any neuron in my head. My parents told me this is what truth is and I am content and I never have to think another thought or grow. And I think what we forget every day when we're living is that we're going to die.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
No one's consciously making choices right now that have the inevitable in mind. If you knew, and there's the cliche bullshit, you know, if you died tomorrow, what would you do today? Mm-hmm. But there is such a healing quality to death in life. And I would say the best thing that ever happened to me in terms of growth was getting the cancer diagnosis. And at the time it was super not good or news. And the amount of time they were thinking was, in my opinion, bad math, you know? And it made me really think about why am I so fucking terrified of dying? Mm. Am I even living in a way that respects the inevitable power of what that means? And it allowed me to let go of so many things that brought me such false senses of security. And one of those things, I mean, people will have their own opinion about this, but one of the things that allowed me to let go of and recognize this thing isn't serving me, it's crippling me, was my blood family. And it's a loaded statement. People are like, wait, you fucking abandoned your parents and siblings? And I would not say I abandoned them, but I let go of the idea that family is supposed to be a specific thing. It's supposed to be the security blanket. I kept holding on to something that kept creating toxicity within my life. And I kept wanting them to be people that were more open to wanting to listen and hear and understand things within myself. And I finally had the balls to sit quietly and say, these people don't desire to understand who I am. They don't desire to love me. They desire for me to be someone who I used to be that used to bring them a shit ton of security. And their desire to have security and not embrace who I am today, it broke my ability to recognize that is a healthy dynamic. Mm-hmm. So in my pursuit to find peace and wholeness, I let go of one of those, like, forever. I would say it's one of the most crippling things in everyone's life, in all cultures. Families, a mother and a father's influence, they are the ones that mold, pretty much for better or for worse, what you're going to be. You know, you look at a 5-6-year-old from the environment that they were in, paternally, maternally, and you can look at who that person's going to be. Pretty much, they're just going to be living out, like, because we never really grow up. We talked about this. It's like, I'm 33 and going on 7 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not just because of my immature humor, but the imprint of what our environment gave us when we were children. Mm-hmm. We are forever playing out the need to protect, and how we have conflict or heal or medicate pain because of the way we handled pain as a child. Mm-hmm. We're forever living out those dysfunctional addictions for our need to find security in things, you know? So I think you really bullseyed the hell out of what we're really trying to get at, is that everything we try to put inside of ourselves, whether it's a specific set of ideologies spiritually, whether it is because I'm this race, whether it is because I cheer for the sports team or I was born here, all of these things that we are trying to weld into that hole and hope that this stays, all of those things are creating a level of security it's totally synthetic. None of it's real. Because I promise you, you're going to fucking die.
Yeah.
And I promise you that you don't know what's going to happen afterwards. And all the decisions you're making between now and that funeral date, more than likely are probably not true and probably not real.
Yeah.
because they are mirages, you know.
Well, I do know.
And and these mirages that we adhere to, the ideologies, it is creating that, essentially, that mirage in the desert. We're in fucking life. We're all fucking starving for love. We're starving and so fucking thirsty to be understood and to feel connected. And the irony is we do so many fucking things every day to divide ourselves amongst other people to get to that mirage of wholeness.
Yeah. But I like your imagery, because to me, it feels like, to tie some of what you're saying together, it's like we're building the synthetic weapon in security against something. And that something, to me, is fear, like we talked about last time. Like, we're scared of so much, right? And it's like we want security to cancel out the fears that we have in our life. The more secure I am, about how safe my car is, the more I can drive 90 miles an hour down the freeway. I'm not worried about a wheel falling off or, losing control and hitting the barrier or whatever, right? So that fear of what's going to come dwindles, right? The fear of death in the car. But to me, it's like when you go down the rabbit hole of that a little bit more, and you're honest with yourself and saying that, like you just said, we are going to die, right? It is something that, like, we don't want to talk about. It just makes you want to just turn off what we're talking about and focus on more pleasant sounding things, right? But the fact is, when we look into that scope and we embrace it instead of run from it, it transforms, right? Because this whole fear or denial of death is something that really affects our lives every single day, depending on like how we want our life to be or whatever else. And the more we kind of keep taking the red pill in a way, is the more we keep exposing that, like, fear is just fear. Like, JFK was right. There's nothing to fear besides fear itself.
Yeah.
Because so much of like what we're scared of is just this, it's almost like this surface level shit. It's like being in the ocean and the storm kicking up these big ass waves, and you're just like, oh my God, I'm like, my ship's going to capsize. I don't want my ship to capsize, but then forgetting that, like, if you could go down into the ocean, it doesn't matter what's going on the surface. It's peaceful, always. And that is what's beyond it. So to me, it's getting to a place like that of just understanding that we're born in life terrified all the time about everything. The more we keep going and progressing and trying to mature, the more we're trying to cope with the fears in so many different ways. But the more, we find these things that help us cope enough where we feel like life is satisfactory. And most of us just don't want to dive down deep enough to see what's really beyond it. But it's amazing when you keep going and you keep, going into that fear and just realizing, all these security blankets that you're seeking, like, it's so much better and peaceful. And it's like you have this glimpse, like I've had this glimpse of being in this place of beyond fear, where you're just at peace with where you're at. You're fully present there. And it's just like, it's the most amazing thing in the world. Like, you just want to be there all the time. It's like you're not angry about anything. You're not shameful about anything. You're at peace. You're open. You're accepting. You're there. You're in it. And it's amazing, because it's just like, I don't know how many people will ever get to that place, because it's just, we don't want to dive deep enough. Yeah. And that's such a sad thing to me, where it's just like, it's part of accepting the reality of where we're at. But, it's like you said in the beginning, where it's like history repeating itself, and it's probably never going to change. There's always going to be those people, right? But it's at least being able to have the dialogue between me and you, and philosophizing enough where if anybody latches onto this, that they can reminisce and think, I wonder what life would be like if I really, took my fears head on, and were introspective enough to really search your soul and see, what makes you tick. Because it's scary on the surface, when you're a 7-year-old, like you just said, 7-year-olds aren't gonna go wandering into a dark, scary place. And that's what it looks like when you're 7. But if you mature enough to look, you're like, you realize that you have to. Mm-hmm. And the more you go into the scary place, the more you realize, man, it ain't so scary. Like, it's essential. Yeah. And that's what keeps you going. So for me, coming back around to this conversation, it's just, I guess it's amazing when you see so many people that refuse to live beyond like the most basic plane of life. The plane of the physical plane, the plane of my skin, your skin, the plane of how you look, how I look, the plane of what you have and what I don't have, in this material form of the most absolute basic human existence. And how many people settle there? And it's like, I don't want to settle there because I don't want my kids to be that way. You know, I don't want my kids to live like that and, you know, and constantly judge people or be that type of a shallow human. The human experience to me, and I'm really grateful for, is the fact that for whatever reason, I've been tapped on the head to have the awareness to keep going and keep pursuing. And the more I have, the more it's just been like this life-giving experience. But the question becomes of like, how do you emulate that in the day to day? Because when I go to work, it's still hard to be that person when I'm drowning in the responsibilities and the stress and everything else that comes from a construction site. Yeah. To me, it's like a war zone in so many ways. Mm-hmm. There's danger everywhere. You're having to constantly watch things and, you know, make sure you're doing something correct so nothing gets messed up or, you know, I mean, there's a lot that we do that is dangerous. And, yeah, it's just a lot to deal with. But for me, when we have these types of conversations, I'm just glad that we could sit here and like bounce this stuff together, because I don't want to, you know, like, I don't want someone to listen to it to think like, oh, here's these two white privileged dudes that are just sitting here playing, you know, spiritual ping pong, hoping that, you know, that they can shed some of their wisdom to all the other wisdom starved people. For me, it's as much about having a conversation with you and hearing what you say and challenging so many things within myself. Yeah. Like, this is active growth for me in session. Yeah. In a way of bringing it back to the hollow place you're talking about, of acknowledging my hollow place.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, you know, it's very commendable to be like that level of humble, you know, and I think there's an extreme to where I think so many people who would listen to this, who are of any other cultural background, would want us to get on our knees and apologize for being white, you know, and I will be the first to say, if I was a black man, a father in that situation, watching another black man and a father get suffocated and murdered because of a ego trip, small man syndrome, whatever, however you want to fill in the blank, by another white man, and there is a disgusting amount of racial injustice. I'm not minimizing any of that, and I have no fucking idea what it's like to be in a position of seeing every day the people that look like me getting treated so unfairly because of how I look. Yeah, I'll be the first to say I would do some really dark shit to try to make amends. Sure. and maybe bring back some balance, you know, in my hate for, in my prejudice, automatic prejudice for any cop that would pull me over. I'd probably lose my fucking mind with how intense I am. I am not proud to admit how many dark things I would do to try to bring back some balance. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm sure. so deeply compassionate to the rage, and then the anger, and because there is a lot of justified anger and disappointment for systems that are in place that are supposed to be there to protect us, you know, but I can't change where I was born or what I was born into. I can't, but I can, you know, have the courage to sit here and say, the only thing I can do, and the only thing anyone else can do, is to not externally point fingers at who's doing this or that, or who's wrong or who's right. Because the only fucking thing you have control over is what is inside of you and how hollow you are. And recognizing all the things you're trying to attach yourself to are false senses of security. You'll never be in control of so many things. You're wanting to have a life be brutally comfortable and pretty. And the only thing I know thus far in life is life being fair isn't something that's factored in. And I have had a ridiculous amount of pain and struggle and sadness and abandonment and different things in my own white Texan life, you know? Mm-hmm. And just because it isn't on the TV as much doesn't mean it's less real.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I just think it's really, really fucking important to not be afraid to have a conversation and not enter into a conversation because I would be enabling all those stereotypes to be real. Mm-hmm. By me being quiet, it non-verbally gives them being the people who have all prejudices and hate in their heart, it enables them to say, you know what, you're right. Because of how I look and the life that I had, I'm not allowed to think thoughts or try to be a part of the change. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I like that idea of, I guess, reflecting on one part you just said, where to me it makes me think of like seeking to understand, and like how if that is something that is like our go-to right off the bat, right? Someone's coming at us with hate, someone's coming at us with truth, someone's coming with whatever, right? But you're just seeking to understand. That's, to me, that's just such a core facet of like what love is. Because I'm imagining when, you know, if someone listens to this podcast and they hear us talking about this hollow place, how many people are just like, you know, instantly just like, oh, it's God, oh, it's love, oh, it's whatever, right? And it's just like they just immediately the answer just pops up in their brain. They're like, oh, this is what they got to do or whatever. And it's like, oh, I may listen to what they have to say, or I may not, because the whole time I'm just like, I know what I know what they need to do to get the hollow place fixed or whatever it is. But then it's like, well, do you really? Because even your own answer, like, so if it's God, what is God? If it's love, what is love? Right. But to think of sitting and seeking to understand, to me, is like, it's such a facet of like what love is, and love can be a total part of the answer based on, you know, whatever understanding you have of it. But I think it's such a key part of like the growth and the seeking, is just like, if I can see you as this human, and, you know, this person that has had all these different life experiences, to the fact that like you're sitting here before me, the person that you are now, and I'm seeking to understand who that is, how you became that way, and like actively listening to you, wanting to know why, and like have this curious spirit of just like, wow, that's crazy. So you had like, and you know, trying to understand, like, to me, that is such a place of growth, not just for the person listening, but for the person talking, where it's like they can actually see someone that's just like open and free to be there and present with you and be a facet of love in some way. So I think it's important to even do that with ourselves, where, you know, we're sitting here talking about this stuff, but just to be bold enough to do that with yourself, to see like, why do I think like that, man? Where'd that thought come from? Mm-hmm. You know, why am I so passionately like moved by this? And it's being aware enough to do that, and just, you know, whatever aha moment sparks for you to have that awareness, is just to keep going, keep the spotlight there. And I don't know if that made any sense, but
I think it's the perfect summary of every word we've just exchanged. The only way to be free in any connection with anyone, with any culture, with any gender, with any spiritual background, with anyone, you know, whether or not there is a purity and there's a truth inside the exchange, if you're doing only one thing, and that is seeking to listen and seeking to understand. And as soon as you seek to be understood, and that becomes the priority, that means you're protecting something. You're afraid that whatever they say might contradict what you are. Yeah. And the need to have one be right is the problem.
It's
so
true. Yeah.
If you want to understand how to make sense of all the fucking chaos, seek to understand and not protect yourself.
I think it's a good way of putting it. And it's funny, it makes me think of The Office. I don't know if you've watched it ever.
Obviously.
Right. But like Michael Scott being the key character, right?
God bless him.
Yeah. We're like, can you think of being friends with that person? Right. Like the whole show, he's just this dumb, he sticks his foot in his mouth, just like, like dude that like no one can stand, but it's almost amazing to watch, right? He's this unique character that just like
totally free.
Like from a distance, it's like, dude, I want to see what he does and how he does it. But when you're up close, you're just like, dude, I don't want to be near you. You like watch everyone squirm in the office. Yeah. But you see like in the writing in the show, like the depth of this character, the more they give you like little glimpses of it to see like his broken past, or like this kid sitting alone with the ball that everyone's just making fun of, right? Or like there's one point in the show where he talks about how the girls volleyball players throw him into the frozen pond all the time when he was a kid, you know, just bullied and broken. And then like now you're thinking of just like, this dude has no friends, right? Yeah. He's sitting there alone, just craving love. Just like he's this love-starved human being that just wants it from anybody. And he wants to give it in his best messed up way possible. And like this deformed, like leper version that no one wants to receive. Right. But it's like, it's being willing to sit with somebody like that just almost like repulses you, that you just want nothing to do with, and being able to see into that person, being able to love somebody like that. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's a great example of how so many of us cannot do that. We can't, we see that dude and we're like, dude, I want nothing to do with you. Don't come to any of my events because you're going to ruin them. Yeah. You know, like just stay away from me. Yeah. And to me, it's just, it's reflective of who we are and how hard it is to actually do it, to actually be around somebody that could say some despicable shit, to be so close-minded, to do so many things where all you want to do is just be like, dude, we ain't friends no more. Don't call me, you know? And that's just you wanting to protect yourself and get away from that Michael Scott in your life. But I'm just thinking, like, for me, you know, it's something where it's challenging to see the human, to be love in a way, which is something that is not for the weak. It takes a tremendous amount of work. But anyway, that just came to me. I thought it was kind of an interesting.
Perfect, man.
Yeah. So Jordan, dude, anything else before we wrap this topic up?
No, man. I mean, you nailed it. It's when life does not make sense racially, spiritually, in any sense, seeking to understand yourself, and recognizing that your lack of desire to understand others is why you don't understand why life doesn't make sense. You know, the only way life will make sense is if you not only want to understand why you are the way you are, but you want to understand why they are the way they are. And that brings peace. You know, there's nothing to defend. You know, and I think that's what love is. I think love is not just a specific set of expressed things. I think love is to, like, whatever your soul's vision is, whatever. If you want to have 20/20 in your soul, and to see into someone else's, like, thoroughly to see into someone else's soul, I think it's only going to make sense when you make sense to yourself, you know?
Yeah.
When you know that you are no better or more right-er than the person you're connected to in whatever moment that is. Like, there is no barrier, there is no difference except for that false one you're imposing on the exchange. You know what I mean?
No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And those are good words to reflect on, I think, as we wrap this sucker up. Because the world's gone crazy, man.
For real, though.
It has gone crazy. I mean, it's kind of crazy to be a part of it. You know, you think of, we constantly reflect on what normal life was like before, 2020 came around.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't really that normal then, but at least we could go out to dinner and see a movie.
Yeah.
For
real.
But at least now, the part that's freaking awesome is like, you see people actually motivated about something, and then we were talking about that before. Like, I'm happy to see people come together around a cause and like be motivated to take action.
It's beautiful.
It is. Yeah. It's awesome. Like, I want to see more people coming out and standing up for stuff.
Yeah.
Climate change, other injustices, all this. Like, let's do it, man. Let's start changing stuff. Let's make it happen.
It's beautiful, man.
So anyway, all right. Well, if you listen to it, we appreciate it. And as always, if you want to send us questions or anything, you can find it on our website. Yeah, Jordan, I want to do the artwork thing again, man, because if anybody wants your awesome artwork, which we'll post later, always just hit us up and we'll be more than happy to send you a message.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's it. Everybody take care. Stay safe out there.